Welcome to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. This is a pre-recorded episode, but I am David, and I'm joined by...
I'm the Wes.
And we have a special guest, it seems like, if you're watching on YouTube, which is my cat, Waffle House, who's decided to perch himself to behind my right shoulder. So, he's just chilling. Hopefully he'll stay quiet, but Waffle House has a mind of his own. So we're just going to go with it.
I think people might be okay with a couple meows here and there, as long as it's not us doing it.
I'm not planning on any meowing from me, but I won't speak for you.
Yeah,
I won't speak for you.
I'll try to refrain.
It is great to be with everyone. We have a lot to talk about, and including the World Cup, which is kicking off just, I believe, as this podcast is going to come out. Are you excited about the World Cup, Wes? I don't know if you're a soccer fan.
Not the biggest soccer fan. As the American in me is sort of annoyed with soccer. You watch it for like 2 hours and it's tied 0-0 at the end, and like they don't even go to extra time or overtime, whatever they call it. Or, sometimes they do go to penalty kicks, but I'm sort of annoyed that that's how they settle things. It's like if the NBA Finals was settled in a free throw contest. So a lot of my good friends are super into soccer, and they try to get me, and I do like it a little bit, but I honestly watch enough sports already, so I try to stay away as much as possible. But I will watch the U.S. and the World Cup and a few games here and there. To some extent, just like hate watching a little bit, but
that's fair. I mean, do you enjoy the nationalism aspect, if nothing else, where you have like people going berserk about Denmark or something?
Nah, a little bit. I mean, I remember one of my good friends from college, like his family was from Jamaica. We went to the U.S. Jamaica game in D.C. and I wore Jamaican clothes. He wore all U.S. clothes, even though he had like dreadlocks, and we looked the opposite. We did that more for the funniness of the look as opposed to...
Was it funny or was it awkward?
Oh, all of the above. It was... We enjoyed ourselves, though. This was like in college. This was...
Okay, good. I was like, you were going to say this was like 3 weeks ago or something.
No, this was a long time ago, but...
Okay. All right. Then it's cool. It's all good. But this is... it's an exciting time for you, given that you do love the sports. We're about to see, I guess when this comes out, we will have seen a pretty exciting NBA Finals as well. I don't know if you're excited about the Spurs playing the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, I love basketball, so I will definitely watch that, and that is kind of appointment viewing for me. I wish that my Celtics were there, but basketball is my first
pretty
love.
Good matchup.
It's a great matchup. It'll be a fun game, and the Knicks, even though I sort of don't love New York, like especially the Yankees and stuff like that, I'm fine with the Knicks winning. It'd be okay. Like
that's generous of you.
It's been a while, and there's a lot of good
53 years.
Yeah,
I think that's one way to say a while. Well, yeah, we always like to have an icebreaker. I thought, given that it's sports season, it feels like, I thought it might be fun to ask a question about stadiums. So, yeah, I'm curious: is there a sports stadium that you've been to that you think really has fantastic transportation, fantastic transportation and planning?
Yeah, it is the ones that were planned prior to us planning anything. It's like Fenway Park, Wrigley Field. Actually, I saw a story in the news last week that Wrigley was looking to add, I don't know if it's 400 or 600 parking spaces, and it gives such a big deal to the neighborhood. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that many parking spaces, but I mean, we obviously didn't talk about what this topic would be beforehand, so I can't remember offhand, but Wrigley at present has very few parking spaces.
Well, it's in the heart of North Chicago, right? There's not in Wrigleyville, literally called Wrigleyville. It's a very dense neighborhood.
And it was funny, like the same day I was looking at that article, some of our students were working on their senior design projects, and they were looking to add like 1,000 parking spaces to a high school in Colorado. And it was more parking spaces than all of Wrigley has. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, why do we need this many parking spaces at this high school when there's already like another 1,000 there and there's only 3,000 kids in the whole high school? Like, what is happening? Like, something seems amiss.
Yeah. Those are good answers. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I will say, like, I don't know. I feel like I live in Washington D.C., where we have, I think, one of the better stadiums that's been built, sort of like post car, if you will. Like, have you ever seen a Nationals game?
No, I've not seen a Nationals game. I have seen a bunch of the Wizards and at the
Yeah,
what's it called
well,
now?
like,
The
the name
MCI
keeps
Center,
changing. It's Capital One
Capital One
Arena
Arena. Yeah.
now.
I was
And
actually
which,
there during construction. I interviewed with Clark Construction when I was in college when they were building that stadium, and they sort of brought us into the construction before the interview
no,
process.
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, like that say Capital One Arena is like in the heart of DC. It's on top of a metro rail hub, Gallery Place.
Yeah.
And the Nationals, that stadium was built 20 years ago, and it's on the river, the Anacostia River. It's also right by a metro station. It actually has, like, they actually have really good bike share connections. They create extra bike share docks during Nationals games. I think DC actually is two of the better stadiums that I've seen for sort of being part of the urban fabric. Unfortunately, we're also, I don't know if you've been following this, we're about to add a third with the Commanders, or the Commies, as a friend of mine calls it, coming to the
I've
city.
heard
And
people
there's
call them the C words.
well, I always, there was a, remember, they used to be called the Redskins, that they couldn't
Oh
do
yeah.
that anymore. So there was a competition for what to name them. And there were some great suggestions. One was the Washington, D.C. Memoranda, which I thought was brilliant, or
Yeah.
the Washington Department of Football, which I also thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty good.
whatever. But the command, I mean, I just think NFL stadiums in the heart of cities makes very little sense, given how seldom they're activated with a game. And there's so much parking being built for this thing in DC. Someone called it a baby boomer project, and that feels right to me. It's really unfortunate, given that we have some really good urban stadiums. We're about to get what seems to be a pretty crappy one.
In RFK, I mean, that it's been a while since I've been there, but I did go there for that Jamaica U.S. game way back in the day. I remember
That's
going.
torn down now, right? That's where
Yeah,
they're
but
putting the
that
Commanders.
location wise was more easily accessible by different transportation modes from what I remember. Like right now, where I stand, the Denver Broncos stadium is like a 15, 20-minute walk straight through my campus heading west, and they are currently planning to move that a little bit to the south, and it will open up a ton of land once they do. And
Hmm.
it seems like Denver's thinking of turning that into neighborhoods. And right now my campus kind of feels like we're at the edge of downtown, but if they start building neighborhoods beyond us, because there's a highway there,
Yeah.
like it might make us more central.
Yeah, I mean, from an urban perspective, I just don't see the value of football stadiums being in the heart of cities. Like as silly as, like, Foxborough, with the Patriots, is way out there. But would
It's
it really
way out
make
there.
sense to have that? But do you really want that in the South End? I mean, I don't know. It having, like, a place for the Celtics play, or Fenway Park, is one thing, but
Yeah.
how many football games are there per year? It's like, what, 7 or 8 per year usually played?
More than that now. They're up to 17. There will be up to 18 probably games. So it'll be
I
nine
mean,
plus preseason games, and if there's playoff games, you could be talking a dozen games, but it's still pretty small.
yeah.
If it's used a dozen times, and maybe they have a handful of
Yeah,
concerts.
concerts and stuff, but I don't know. It's not that great. So yeah, it's interesting, but I agree with you. I think I've been to Fenway Park. It's fantastic. I've been to Wrigley. It's great as well. I think you're right. The old ones are pretty consistently terrific. Unfortunately, a lot of them have been torn down, but you still do, like, Camden Yards is famous for being great in Baltimore. Like, there are some that are good when they're part of the urban fabric and they don't have a lot of parking. Parking really is kind of what kills them. Like, you've seen the aerial pictures of Dodger Stadium in LA,
Yeah.
and just, like, it's just acres and acres of surface parking lots. It's
Uh,
ugh.
Even here, like, so the Ball Arena where the Nuggets and the Avalanche play is right to my right here, and like that neighborhood won the parking crater award that Street Spog used to do. They used to have this March Madness style tournament, and like they are removing a lot of that parking and turning it into housing and commercial. Like, so that is a transition that's apparently happening soon, hopefully. So I think, yeah, it sucks as is for a lot of those places, but as
Yeah.
people realize that parking isn't kind of our highest and best use, like there's opportunity there too.
Yeah, it makes sense. Let's we can keep talking about sports, but should we go into word on the
We
street?
are. And we're going to be
Yeah.
talking about stadiums too. Like, so for Word on the Street, we're going to be talking about the World Cup. And I was interested in it from, I guess, the transportation culture shock. So American fans, like when we go overseas, a lot of folks come back amazed to see how easy it is to experience a game or a match in the venues that if you're in Europe or South America or wherever you might go. Oftentimes, you need to take a train there. You can meet friends at a bar or a pub right outside the stadium. You can have a few drinks, walk over with the crowd, watch the game, and then
Hmm.
walk back, take the train. And, especially if you're going from venue to venue, it's usually easy to take trains
Hmm.
between place and place.
Hmm.
But this is the year where the world comes here. At some venues, including Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play, like it is literally listed as the Boston venue in the FIFA
Hmm.
guidebook, but it is not in Boston. It's not close to Boston. It's closer to Providence, Rhode Island than it is to Boston.
Did you see that there was like somebody had a house within walking distance to Foxborough, and they put their house on Airbnb for like $50,000 for the week? I'm not even kidding. They really did
Um,
that.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that's what it's going to be like with parking. I mean, I think a lot of visitors from other countries are going to come here and be expecting to take a train or transit or to stay right by the game or whatever it might be. And when Americans come back from, like Europe, for example, they're like, oh, this is great. Like, it'd be nice if we could have X, Y, and Z here. Um, but I'm curious, like, there's going to be the opposite when people come here.
The Europeans come here and they leave. You're like, thank God we don't live in
Yeah.
America. Yeah.
Like, so, the idea of the match being this thing that's easy to get to, that is social, and like the neighborhood's part of the fun. Part of the problem is FIFA's putting these events in the football stadiums because their goal is to sell as many tickets as possible. Like, they're not putting it at Fenway Park or Wrigley. They're putting it at Gillette or out in the Meadowlands or, even like in Dallas. Like, it's called the Dallas venue, but it's out in Arlington, right? And there's no
Hmm.
great transit. I mean, some of them, there is a train going from Boston South Station out to Gillette, but it
Did
does
you
run
see how
there.
much some of those trains are going to cost?
Oh, they've jacked up the prices. I heard it was supposed to be like 160 first go around, but they lowered it to 80, which is still
And in New
4 or
York
5
it's
times.
98. In New York, to get to MetLife Stadium,
Yeah.
it was originally 150 down to $98 round trip on New Jersey.
But we're
Transit.
also still forcing these international folks to go to Penn Station before they go out there, right?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I mean that's to me is not that bad. Frankly, I don't really, maybe it's a controversial take. I don't really fault New Jersey Transit for
Yeah.
charging $98 round trip to go from Penn Station to MetLife and back if you want to watch a match. Because I mean, when this all started to go down, New Jersey Transit CEO said, "Look, I'm not going to make my riders pay pay extra to subsidize the expense of FIFA customers when FIFA is not contributing a dime toward the cost of transportation." And FIFA is kind of a monstrosity. Like, they're making billions out of these games.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
frankly have a lot of sympathy. They're horrible. I kind of don't blame the transit agencies like New Jersey Transit for saying, look, like, if you're not going to pay for this, we're going to charge a market price to the people trying to get to the game. Like, it is what it is. I don't know if you feel otherwise.
No, I totally agree with that. But the ones that have that as an option are the better examples. And obviously, we have the Canadian cities like Toronto and Vancouver that have some games, from what I've heard. Like that will be a lot easier for fans going there.
Way
But
better.
like my buddy is going to 2 games in Houston, and he is from Houston, even though he lives in Virginia now, and is trying to figure out, where the Airbnb he's staying at is 5 miles from the stadium, and he's like, I could probably walk or jog better than I could a lot of other modes. Like, maybe I could take a ride hail to get there, but coming back would probably be a nightmare. Like,
I don't know if you want to jog in Houston in late June, but
yeah,
that's a different issue.
yeah,
That's
he
back to
knows.
me and my inability to handle humidity and heat. But we don't have to go there again. No, it's going to be a bit of a mess. The whole World Cup honestly feels like a bit of a mess, even beyond transportation. Where I don't know if you've seen like hotels aren't doing nearly as well as they thought they were going to do with the World Cup matches. Like it's unfortunate, but it's also unfortunate because if you look back at sporting events in general, there is a history of a major sporting event being a real turning point for transportation infrastructure. Like, for example, the 1996 Olympics, where MARTA was the official way of getting around Atlanta.
Yep.
And I believe that was when there was an extension to northern Atlanta by the MARTA lines that's, of course, still there. Like, you really can see significant upgrades that become a permanent element, but I'm not seeing anything tied to the World Cup along those lines this year.
It seems to be more of a thing for the Olympics. So I went to Vancouver, I mean, not that long after their Olympics, and you could see they were taking the Olympic Village and turning it into housing, and that a lot of the train lines came in because of that.
Turin, Italy also added its subway because of the Olympics.
I mean, there are examples where that wasn't the case, like Sochi, Russia. You've seen those pictures where it is a ghost town and there's like thousands and thousands of acres of parking that are just empty now. But other places have done a much better job of taking the investment into those events and turning into something that makes their city better after the event is over, because they have 16 days of glory, and then after that, what do you do?
Then what?
Then what? Well, the World Cup is harder though, because they're all over the place.
I guess that's right. That makes sense. And to be fair, a lot of even the Olympics that I think we look back on thinking, oh, that was a really good multimodal Olympics, the benefits don't necessarily stick around, like the Paris Olympics, which were really celebrated for involving the Paris Metro and so many and encouraging biking. There are a lot of temporary bike lanes that were built. I don't know if you saw, Wes, there was a recent academic paper that just came out basically showing that after the Olympics, the temporary uptick in biking kind of went away. So that temporary infrastructure really didn't change behavior among Parisians very much. Of course, Paris is seeing a sort of medium to long-term increase in cycling anyway because of the ongoing transportation effects there, or reforms there, I should say. But, simply doing something positive during the Olympics doesn't necessarily, it seems, lead to sustained change in how people travel.
That makes sense. I mean, we'll see what happens with, we have the Olympics coming to LA.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a challenge. Seeing the Olympics in LA I guess that's, how far away is that now? Like
28, right?
It's 2 years. So Trump will still be president, which is its own complication. But LA is, famously sprawled. They did just open. Did you see this? They got a lot of attention for opening a new LA Metro line, the D line, with the tagline of "Ride the D." They can't keep the T-shirts in stock, and I'm not joking about that. But I mean, LA is making efforts to facilitate non-car travel, but I mean, the bones of that city are just such that I don't know how people would get around an Olympics without automobile access, right? I don't know if you feel otherwise.
It's tough. I mean, the times I've gone to LA, and I really try to go out of my way not to use a car and try to use the trains, and it led to some tough experiences, like literally standing in the middle of a highway interchange, like waiting for the transfer of the train, and it was like a Saturday, and I think I was there for at least 45 minutes waiting for it.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I'll just say this to close the section. If you are interested in Olympic prep in LA, check out Alyssa Walker's newsletter called Torched. It really is sort of like an insider's perspective of all that's happening there. And she has a background in transportation reporting. So there's a lot there about how that city is trying to get ready for the Olympics, including from a transportation side. But now it's time for Roundabout. This is the part of the episode where we pick a topic or two that we just think we want to talk about. And this time, Wes, you have something to say about school buses, if I'm not mistaken.
I think we've talked about stadiums enough for today. So I wanted to talk about school buses and railroad crossings, which doesn't sound like the most exciting topic, but I think it gets at something bigger. So under current federal rules, school buses and I think other commercial vehicles, especially when they're transporting hazardous waste or something, like they have to stop at every railroad track crossing. They have to look or listen for an approaching train and confirm there's no train before proceeding across.
Hmm.
There are some states, I saw Louisiana has a rule where they actually have to open the door. And
Yeah, that
like,
was what it was like. Do you remember doing this when you were growing up in Massachusetts?
no, man, I never took the bus to school. Like
How did you get to school?
I walked.
Oh, you walked. Oh, you're
Yeah.
so good. No, I took the school bus in North Carolina, and I remember this. The school bus would stop at the railroad tracks in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I grew up, and it's true. Like the doors would open at every railroad track. I always thought it was a little weird, but I was 8 years old. I didn't know any better. I do remember this though.
Yeah, no, it's a thing. But right now we're in the midst of what might be a rule change. Like I saw last week, they had the final comments had to be submitted to it. So whatever the organization is trying to change the rules so there would be an exception at crossings that have some sort of active warning device. It doesn't have to be the arm bars that go up and down. It could just be a flashing light. But if that device says there's no train coming, then the bus would no longer have to perform the full like stop, look,
Hmm.
and listen routine
Yeah,
and be able to cross. So as far as I can tell, it is not a final rule yet, but it is one that is supposedly going to be changing soon. So
it seems. Am I supposed to be opposed to this? Because that seems rational to me.
it does, but I understand why the rule exists. I mean, we don't want to be casual about kids and trains, but the question I have is, more bigger picture. Like, was the original rule? I don't
Mm.
know. Is this more a ritual? Is this more about safety? Like, is the current rule actually making kids safer, or just something we're doing just because of inertia and because we've always done it? But to me, also, it's a jumping off point for other transportation stuff that we do for the same reason. Like, we do things in the name of safety that may not actually be for safety. And like maybe different than this case. Like there's probably some examples where we can think of things that are making safety worse by
Well,
this ritual as opposed to
I
um
feel like your book is full of these, isn't it? Like the
yeah.
what are they called? Like the barrier lines on a roadway, like the white lines to show where
Oh,
the
the edge
lane
lines.
ends.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard to say for that one is actually safer or not safe. But at the time, they found it led to worse safety, but they went ahead anyways. But
worse
things
safe.
like
It led to worse safety. They went ahead anyways. Is that what you
yeah,
said?
yeah. I mean,
Wow.
that was in the 1950s in like Ohio and Kansas or whatever the two states were that actually did
Hmm.
some real studies on that. But things like the urban clear zone, like the fact we're cutting down
Yeah.
trees in urban areas in the
Yeah.
name of safety, but there's research out there saying that is actively making our streets
Hmm.
less safe.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, my book does do a lot of that kind of stuff, but I think it extends to stuff my book's not about, like technology and cars and like things in that
Yeah.
realm.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like one example is
Yeah.
actually relatively recent. Is and this we've talked, God, I don't know, like 20 episodes ago, I think, about A pillars and blind zones from them. And one of the reasons why A pillars, which are that sort of piece of material that goes between the passenger and driver side window in a car and the windshield, is one of the reasons they've gotten much thicker in the last 30 years is because of a federal rule that was well intentioned. It was developed in the 90s when SUV rollovers were a really big problem and it was scaring the heck out of a lot of people.
The Isuzu
Um,
Suzuki, remember that? That thing was
yeah, yeah,
those things
yeah.
were flipping over all the time.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a real issue because when the SUV would flip over, then the roof would cave in, and the people inside the vehicle would be seriously injured, if not killed.
Yep.
And this was like a big thing. So to address that, I think relatively real issue for car occupant safety, the federal government adopted a rule circa, I don't know exactly, like 2002 ish,
Okay.
that basically required that every car needs to be able to have a roof strong enough to support 3 times the vehicle's weight if it's on the roof. It flips over completely. And that's very well intentioned, right? Because you don't want people to die inside a car if it flips over. And the SUVs had higher centers of gravity, so they were flipping. But okay, that's fine, good, reasonable enough. But the thing was, it takes several years for these sorts of rules to be implemented once they're conceived of. during that time, you ended up with car companies developing, I believe it's called electronic
Stability
vehicle
control.
control,
Okay.
right? Yeah, electronic stability control. So that basically the computers in the cars were recognizing when there was risk of flipping over, and they basically like prevented that from happening. So the number of SUV flipovers went way down. So the benefit of stronger roofs and A pillars or thicker A pillars went way down. It really wasn't necessary anymore because you had fewer situations where it mattered. But meanwhile, to adhere to the federal rules, you had automakers that were building thicker pillars that created blind zones that now obstruct driver vision and can conceal pedestrians and even other cars at times. So, and there's been no effort that I know of to get rid of that rule, which seems like it was well intentioned, but ended up being counterproductive in the end.
No, that's a great example. Like I know my Jeep Wrangler has a roll bar. In theory, I could roll it over, and it's always been a little bit comforting that should that happen, I'll be okay. At the same time, it's never come up, and I've had that car for 26 years.
Yeah. Well, I hope it never does come up. And for 20, if a car that's 26 years old, I don't know if it actually does it have the technology to prevent rollovers?
I
Do you
doubt it.
know?
There's very little
Got it. Well,
technology
maybe
in that
maybe for
car.
you it is good. Maybe I do have to worry about you with the rollovers, but for those who don't have a 26-year-old Jeep, you're if you've got the
Well,
average car is
cars
what,
are
13, 14 years old, you don't have to
SUVs,
worry about this.
EVs.
Yeah.
They are much heavier. So to withstand the A pillar needs to be bigger because cars are heavier, because SUVs are bigger. Like it has grown. We've talked about this on the podcast before. It's grown in conjunction with the way that our cars have grown. So the carb
That's true.
load has led to bigger A pillars, but we're still trying to make sure we're not crushing people if the car flips. But how often is that coming up? I don't know. Like this is one where, yeah, you could argue both sides of it because if your car does flip, I would still want it to not crush me, right?
Well, sure, but the number of cars that flip today compared to 30 years ago, I don't know the exact number, but from everything I wrote about this a year or two ago,
Right.
and the numbers are way down. So the benefit is lower. And I think now, particularly as cars get heavier, as you're saying, those A pillars have to get thicker and thicker to adhere to the federal
Yep.
rules. And when that happens, you're more likely to basically conceal a vulnerable road user, which are where we're seeing the
Right.
big surge in deaths over the last decade.
And
right?
we know full well that like the obscuration of the like pedestrian crossing, on the right or left and the car is turning, like we know that is a big problem. But the difference is it's harder to put a number to that. Like
Yeah.
we know how many pedestrians are dying, but it's harder to link it to the A pillar obscuring that pedestrian, let's say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think your overall point is a good one, which is like we should always be sort of challenging ourselves and asking the question of like, is this sort of practice within transportation in the name of safety actually achieving a safety outcome? Or is it just something we're due out of inertia because nobody wants to be the first one to say, maybe we don't need to do this anymore? Because like with what you started with the railroad crossing and school bus example, I think, it's not a big cost of having the school bus stop and open its doors at every crossing, but those seconds add up. They cost gas, they delay the bus, they're a minor annoyance, I would imagine, for the bus drivers. And who's actually stepping up to say, you know what, we can actually reduce a little bit of friction here by getting rid of a rule that isn't actually accomplishing anything?
I mean, you might even
Uh,
reduce the number of rear end crashes. Like I'm sure there are some drivers
Also, that's a good point too.
not expecting the bus to stop, and then you're like, wait, what's happening? Like I was expecting
Yeah.
just to roll over it. I mean, but that I'd rather have a few more rear end crashes than a bus getting hit by a train.
Of course, but again, it's worth asking the question of like, is that a real issue now, given the technologies we have
Right.
with vehicles and with trains and with crossings? Like questioning assumptions and longstanding behaviors in transportation is something that needs to happen a lot more. We've talked about that a lot. It's a big part of your book, like the 85th percentile rule, which sets speed limits much too high in urban areas is another example. Like we need to have a transportation system where people are empowered and encouraged to ask whether longstanding rules are still valuable. Because too often people are almost like just afraid to ask those questions because of the downside risk and, frankly, limited upside for them individually when the societal upside could be considerable.
And I think it applies to so many things across the board. You've given some great examples, and I mean, how wide lanes are is another one from my book. Like, we always
Sure.
assume wider is better, 12 feet is the norm, but 13 is better. But you start realizing that maybe 11 or 10 could lead to safer conditions, or
Yeah.
something that's not as much talked about in my book is like parking spaces. Like, how many parking spaces do we need at a stadium? And
Well, yeah.
they do the math, and it's and that math isn't really steeped in a lot of science, but they come up with a number and they tell you how much parking you need at a stadium or a transit stop or an apartment complex. And there are consequences to that, which, can lead us to, being able to build less housing or something.
Well, that's the whole topic of parking minimums, which are finally getting the scrutiny they should have gotten a long time ago. They were always based on speculation and without real logic. And now I think people are recognizing that's one of many reasons why housing has gotten so unaffordable in much of the country, is that these parking requirements have jacked up the price of building anything.
And I think just asking those questions, and like in the school bus example, like, hey, like, why do we do this? Like, where did this rule come from? And I think the rule comes from like the 1920s or something like that. It's a very old rule. We've been doing it forever. But asking why, like, is this actually helping? That should be part of the process for everything we're doing, and it's not. So, and I know this is not. It's kind of a boring topic in comparison to things, but the underlying thinking I thought was important.
No, I don't think it's boring at all. I think the theme here is that it is a good thing to challenge longstanding practices in transportation, particularly around safety, given how terrible our safety outcomes are in the U.S. And even if ultimately you conclude, like, actually this does make sense and we should keep it as it is, good for you for asking the question. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's
do
see.
that more.
Let's see if this is something that needs to be done. I mean, I would love to maybe see some numbers on this school bus stuff. Like, all the articles I read didn't really have anything backing up.
I don't know if it exists.
Yeah.
But that's part of the reason why you ask it. So maybe you find some research dollars to pose the question. It would be useful.
Sure.
Big school bus will pay for it. Let's take some reader questions. Let's do mailbag. Mailbag is a section we've done for a little while where we incorporate questions from our listeners, which we're always happy to get. You can submit questions on our website, lookbothwayspodcast.com, or you can email us, which is lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. And I've got a few questions ready if you're okay to hear them. Let's start with Trevor. I think we talked about the World Cup. Trevor had a World Cup related question.
Okay.
And Trevor asked, could congestion prices on trains for what he calls ultra sporting events like the World Cup be considered a progressive tax to fund transportation? Since we'll have a lot of wealthy tourists taking the train to World Cup matches. Is that something we should be doing? Your thoughts?
I mean, we talked about the examples of like in Boston and New York where they are upping the price for the World Cup travelers to use the trains.
They're not making it a profit center. I've never heard of anyone making it a profit center.
No, they're not making it a profit center. And I don't really think it should be. I mean, because if you start pushing too far on this, people are going to say, hey, I'm just going to rent a car and figure out another way to get there.
Also, how much are you really going to make? Like New Jersey Transit was saying they were going to break even at $150 per rider. I don't see any reason why they'd be lying. Like, are you going to charge $250? And even then, how much are you really going to make? You'll make like $1 million, maybe theoretically, but that's a drop in the bucket when you look at transit budgets overall.
So I do think, like, this doesn't relate to being like a progressive tax on transit, but I do think transit could be priced differently. So at off-peak times, it could be priced a lot lower. And most cities do not do this. Like in Denver, it's priced the same whenever you go to the airport or wherever you take the train or the bus. Like maybe having different prices at different times could be something we do, to help fill up the buses and the trains at times when they're not full. Like just like we price everything else, but we don't do that for transit.
You sound like one of my heroes, Bill Vickery,
Oh, all right.
the economist. No, he wrote an article in the 1950s saying that the New York subway was should get rid of the tokens, which were new at that point, and instead charge based on distance and based on congestion, and making it extremely cheap to ride the subway at, say, 1 p.m. when demand is low, and a whole lot more expensive at 5:20 p.m. when it's a lot of demand, but also there's externality costs if you ride then, because you're creating discomfort for other riders, or you're forcing the agency to deploy another train, which is really hard at peak times. I thought it was a pretty compelling argument.
And I think we should do the same thing for transit that we're starting to do with congestion pricing, right? Like we could do the same thing and probably end up with a much more efficient system. At the same
Agreed.
time, I do agree with some of the arguments that you want to keep the pricing simple. But to me, that's more about how to actually pay than it is about how much it actually costs. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
you've
that's
been
fair.
in some places where you tap on, tap off, and oftentimes I have no idea how much I'm actually paying, but it's easy to do. It's the places where people are spending a lot of time trying to figure out how the heck do I even pay. Like that's when it gets annoying.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Ready
Thanks,
for another
Trevor.
question?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. Let's go to Finland, where Antti in Finland writes in.
Auntie. All
Hello,
right.
Antti, saying that I don't know if that's a man or a woman, but hello, Antti.
This isn't your
Saying
aunt from Finland that.
no, A-N-T-T-I. It's not Auntie, A-U-N-T.
Oh, double
You gotta
T.
think globally, Wes. Think
Aunt
globally. I want to say it's a man's name, but I don't remember. I've been to Finland for years.
Right.
And that language is impossible. Why are we talking about this? Let's move on. Auntie
What's
asks,
happening in Finland?
a new bridge in Helsinki opened in mid-April, and it's very impressive. It's the longest in Finland and a landmark. And he says that it doesn't have any car lanes at all. It's for people who are
Cool.
traveling without a car. Could you see an American city, he asks, or they ask, building a landmark bridge that doesn't have car lanes?
Oh,
I have an
totally.
answer for this myself, but I'll
Oh
let you
yeah,
go
I could
first.
definitely see that. It might be harder to find funding today.
Well, we have one. Now I have to jump in.
Yeah,
Like,
go ahead.
have you been to Portland, Oregon with Tillicum
Yeah,
Crossing?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool, like, what, 15-year-old bridge
So
that's
Portland is
just
the
for
first city
transit, walking, and biking.
that came to mind on this, like
Yeah.
because I know the numbers like on the Hawthorne Bridge for like the number of bicyclists going over it have been really high, and at some point they might say, you know what, instead of trying to expand that, you could just build a second bridge next to it or something like that. So hey, Portland's not the only city on this. And like I said, it's going to be hard to get funding for a project like this given the current administration. But I definitely see it happening. How long did you say this bridge was in Finland?
He didn't say,
Okay.
and I didn't look it up. I
Well, you
don't
said
know.
like it's like the biggest.
It's the longest in Finland,
Longest,
and it's
yeah.
very impressive. He says it's a landmark. I don't know how long it is. I'm not going to lie. I don't know.
All right, I'm seeing here that it is almost 3/4 of a mile long, 0.74 miles. That's a long bridge.
It's pretty good. Tillicum's shorter than that, I think. Are you going to go
Well,
check?
No, I was just looking at more about this bridge. The pictures are great of this bridge here. So people
Yeah, well,
are-
let's put it in the show notes so
Yeah.
that people can see pictures of it. So, Auntie, there maybe is your answer. There is at least one in the U.S., and there could be more, but perhaps not right now because Trump won't fund it.
So there's a tram system along this one too. It's not just the pedestrian and
Yeah,
cycling
that's like
paths.
Tillicum again.
Yeah, they got the tram
Yeah.
there.
It's good.
There's a lot of boats in the water too along this stretch, so it's pretty cool.
I feel like you're going to get Wes to take his next vacation in your country, Auntie. So good question. Let's go on. We have a good question from Madison, Wisconsin this
Okay.
time, from Susan, who asks, I think is a really interesting question. She says, what language is the most appropriate to use when broaching subjects broaching subjects related to the problems with cars with people who are not transportation wonks? Phrases like car supremacy and car brain may be accurate, but they seem polarizing. Motor normativity is a mouthful. Windshield bias needs explanation. And she says car-centric is the best she can think of, but she wonders if you or I have another idea. Wes, what do you think?
So this is a good question, and
It is.
there are obviously things that we can probably be better at saying if you want to actually be persuasive, because so much of what you hear in this realm sort of assigns a moral identity, like you are the problem, and you're putting people on the defensive from the get-go. So I think things like car brain, car supremacy, it tends to trigger that defense from people. So, you're almost accusing people of being a type of person, and it ends the conversation before you could even get started. Things like motor normativity don't work either. Like that has a whole another set of problems. It might capture what we're actually talking about better, but it sounds too academic. Like we're sitting in our ivory towers talking about motor normativity, and it's not useful in everyday language. It might be useful for writing or for talks, but I'm not sure what the actual term is. I'm kind of framing the bigger picture things here, like whether it's car-centric, because the idea is to really focus more on the systems than the individual drivers. That's what I tried to do and make it a system problem. Like I don't blame most people for driving or even for driving big SUVs, because we put them in a position where that makes the most sense. They live in a place where they sort of have to drive. They don't have any other options. And we put them in this arms race where driving a bigger SUV does make logical sense. And we've built that system. So when you talk about it more from a systems perspective, that's what I would try to aim towards. What the actual words are, I'm not sure, Susan, but it's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know either. I actually think car-centric is okay, the one that she sort of settled on herself. I don't like motor normativity or windshield bias. I definitely don't like car supremacy. I don't use that.
Yeah.
It's a term for blue sky as far as I'm concerned.
I don't use car brain either. Like,
no, I don't either. I do use car bloat because I feel like
you coined that phrase. I keep hearing everywhere we go. That's how they introduce
some
you on
say,
stage.
Some say,
coined the phrase.
I think I did. No, but it's a specific aspect of the car. It's more specific than this conceptual idea that people are biased in favor of cars. It's basically saying cars have gotten unnecessarily big, and I think bloat conveys that succinctly in one syllable. But in terms, it's really hard, Susan, to think of how you can have a term to broach some pretty nuanced ideas in a way that doesn't alienate people right off the bat. I don't have a better option than car-centric for her, I'm afraid to say.
So do you want honest. Car bloat on your tombstone? Is that? No,
not really. I've got to do better than that. I have to. I haven't actually drafted that yet. I don't know. So someone from England was just telling me that their favorite inscription on a tombstone was a comedian who's apparently his tombstone really does read, "See, I told you I was sick."
Yes.
Which I do think is pretty funny. That? You've heard that before?
I have heard that before. It's something I joke with my wife about, because sometimes she's telling me she's sick and I kind of don't give enough attention to the sickness. And she's like, I'll put it on a tombstone. Like, I told you I was sick.
I want to say it was Peter Cook, the British comedian. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was
actually just talking to my kids the other day. Like, it won't probably be that long where you're going to be able to have like a touch screen on your tombstone where you could like walk around a cemetery, like push a button, and like all of a sudden someone is talking to you about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah, that just feels weird.
It does feel super weird. Because I've heard there is somebody, it must be a Twitter account, that some people have put recipes on their tombstone, and this person collects the various recipes people have put on their tombstones.
I don't know what to make of that, honestly. I have nothing to contribute on that. That's just a little weird.
But it's something useful. Like, otherwise it just says like your name and your year and,
I guess a little creepy.
I told you I was sick.
Yeah, I made Dead Abbey's Ratatouille. I don't know. It feels weird. I don't know. Maybe I just don't have the imagination. I don't know.
Well, at that point, who cares? You're dead, so you don't really need to worry about it. But
so you don't believe in the afterlife. We got that clear. But really cover everything and look both ways, listeners. You really get more than you probably ever wanted from these episodes sometimes. All right. I may have one last question, maybe, if that works for you.
Yeah. All right.
So this one is from Michael, who is, I guess he's from Germany, but he lives in Beverly Hills right now in California.
All right.
And he says that he is thinking about the ubiquitousness, of the stop sign in the United States. He says in Germany, and he thinks in most of Europe, yield signs are much more common than stop signs. And stop signs are only used at really dangerous intersections. And he says, really, usually there's a lot more yield signs and a lot more roundabouts in Europe. So his question is, what do you think about yield versus stop signs, particularly given in the U.S. people don't usually stop at stop signs? Um, is it something that we should reconsider? And also, should we just be converting stuff into roundabouts?
Well, okay, they threw in that monkey wrench at the end there. Like, probably yes on the roundabout thing. We should probably be doing more of those.
Yeah, roundabouts are great.
At the same time, at least in the U.S., I don't think people even slow down at yield signs, right? The way we treat, like we use stop signs as yield signs, and we use yield signs as nothing. So if we started switching everything from stop signs to yield signs, we're basically taking away any control at any intersection. So no, I'd hesitate to take away stop signs, at least given the current climate of driving. And I would argue we probably need more stop signs. You probably need more four-way stop signs. There is research showing that going from two-way to four-way stop signs in a lot of contexts is way safer.
Yeah, or maybe more enforcement at stop signs. There's a startup called Obvio that I've done some stuff with in the past that is looking at ways of doing camera-based enforcement of stop signs. And I frankly think it's a good idea. You don't even have to necessarily ticket drivers, but make sure that they feel like somebody is keeping an eye on them to make sure they're not blowing past the stop sign. To me, that's how you culture change.
Yeah, so for people that are blowing stop signs, totally. But if somebody is, maybe not coming to the most complete stop, is that where you're ticketing as well with a system like that?
You can have different ways of looking at it. I think that usually you start with a warning, but the idea is that particularly, you don't have to do it at every single stop sign everywhere, but in neighborhoods where you do have children playing and you've got real issues around safety, being a little bit stricter can make some sense. And there are technological solutions for this now.
Because I've heard a police officer tell me that the way, like when he's sitting at a stop sign trying to see if cars come to a complete stop, that what he's looking for was when you come to a complete stop, your hood kind of drops a little bit, like it stops and lowers. So if your hood doesn't lower, his assumption was you did not come to a complete stop. And
That's interesting.
I was like, what, really? Like that? You're giving people tickets like that, for all intents and purposes, like it seems like they stop, but didn't.
Well, the main thing is like the reason why you're never going to use police enforcement to get out of this problem because it's super expensive to have a police officer doing this, and you're moving those officers around, which means that it's not that sticky in terms of like people realize there's no more cop at the street, they're going to start blowing through the stop sign again. That's why I actually think technology here could be a solution. This is an area where I'm relatively optimistic about technology providing a fix. But it's still a pretty sort of like pushing the envelope kind of road safety solution at the moment.
Yeah. And I think I would ask the question is like, are we improving safety with these things? Like, yes, people blowing through stop signs would improve safety. And, I think this also speaks to like the Idaho stop law for bicyclists. So for bicyclists, we've switched the law. We did so in Colorado recently where bicyclists are allowed to treat red lights as a stop sign and treat stop signs as a yield sign. To be honest, because that's what they were doing beforehand. And the results have shown, at least in Idaho and the other studies I've seen of other places that have done that, it actually has led to better safety. But a lot of people think it would lead to worse safety, and at least it doesn't seem like it has done that.
The only thing I will contribute to that point about the Idaho stop is to note that if you talk about the Idaho stop online, just brace yourself because there's this one account from Delaware that will come in being like,
really?
No. Delaware was first. It's the Delaware stop. Delaware. And it's just very funny to me.
All right. I did not know that. That is good to know.
I don't know if it's true or not. It's just there's this one very insistent Delaware biking account that is just cares a lot about who gets credit.
All right, Delaware.
Delaware. We don't talk about Delaware very much. So
like if we're going to start putting technology onto like, obviously we talked about red lights before, like in having red light cameras makes a lot of sense because that is where we're getting most of the injuries and deaths in the transportation system is. Yeah. So like using technology, are we getting them at the stop sign versus yield sign level? Like Michael from Germany is talking. I don't know. Like, I'd be curious to see like how big of a problem this is, and
Yeah.
if we should head that direction as well. Because I mean, we can barely get the political capital to do it at red lights or even in like school zones for speeding. Like, to get it for stop signs seems so far beyond where we are today.
I don't know. They've legalized it in Maryland recently, and I know there's some other states that are looking at it. This is like a hot topic at the there's like a Lifesavers safety conference. I know they were discussing it there. So we shall see. I think we should call it there. If you have more questions for us, please share them on our website, lookbothways.com, or email us at lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. But now we come to Rail Drinks, where it is time for Wes and me to sort of draw the conversation to a close with a beverage of our choice. And Wes, what are you drinking?
I am drinking some whiskey. So this is
I'm shocked to hear this.
Talnua. It's a distillery here in Colorado, and not this year, but last year it won whatever the award is for like America's best whiskey.
I'm not gonna make any assumptions, but I will say, Wes, like 2/3 of the time on this podcast, you're drinking whiskey out of a new bottle, and that bottle is always like a third done. I mean, you're gonna pour it out, you're not chugging straight from the bottle, but like these are not bottles that are untouched. It's kind of remarkable. So you're definitely not drinking only on the podcast, is all I'm saying.
No, I share these with some friends of mine. We have a little whiskey get together. For some of my gluten-free friends that can't drink beer, we stick to whiskey.
Gluten-free friends. That's like, oh boy, I'm not even going to go there. That's too easy. No, gluten-free whiskey drinking. Okay.
No, because they don't want to drink beer, so I was like, all right, I like whiskey, so that's what it kind of became. Is once a month we kind of get together and have some whiskey. So sometimes it's fun to show up with a new one from time to time.
That's nice.
And this is a good one. So I usually start there and then bring it here after the fact. And
all right, well, in that case, I withdraw my gentle dig. Fine. I'm actually drinking whiskey myself, or bourbon actually this time. I decided I was gonna. Well, you were like giving me a lot of crap last time about my ridiculous Indonesian shirt, and my shirt's a little loud this time too. I wore it for you, but you let it go. This is actually not an Indonesian shirt. I had this one from before, and I just felt like wearing it to see if I could.
This shirt is less drug dealer and more retirement community vibe.
I will say that I mentioned to somebody last week that you said that my shirt last time looked like I was a villain from Miami Vice, and they sort of looked thoughtfully at me, nodded and said, yeah, he's got a point. So, you had some support. But anyway, I'm actually decided I wanted to be a little more classy with my beverage this time. So I poured myself an old fashioned using bitters and sugar and all of that. I actually do like an old fashioned, although it's more of a winter drink and it's now June. But whatever, it's what I'm going to be drinking and I like them. So there you have it.
That's great. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. Well, on that note, we bring another episode to a close. Our next episode will be a live stream, and that's going to be on Tuesday, June 23rd at 6:00 Eastern. Hope you can join us. We'd love to have you there. The link will be on our YouTube page. Easy enough to find. All of our episodes are available at lookbothwayspodcast.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, maybe leave a review there on Apple, wherever you feel like leaving a review. It does help other people discover it. But Wes, good to see you. Looking forward to the next episode in a few weeks. Who should I be pulling for in the World Cup other than the U.S.? Do you have a team that you care about?
I've heard France is the favorite, so maybe don't root for them. I like underdogs in general. When it's
all right.
If it's at a sporting event where one of my teams is not really in it, I usually pull for the underdogs. But yeah, hopefully the U.S. can do better than expected.
We shall see. I guess we will know by the time we do our next recording, so we can discuss, as it were.
Well, we'll know a little bit. They'll start.
Is it over? When is it over? Is it going through July?
It takes a while because they go through the group stage, and
that's true. All right, well, whatever. We can return to it. Fair enough. As you can tell, I'm not all that up to speed on World Cup.
Or what do you call this? The sport ball? Is that your
sports ball? That's your thing.
Yeah.
I salute your love of the sports ball.
Yes.
On that note, good to see you. See you in a couple weeks.
All right.